Hi, and welcome to the Global Markets Advisor. Today I wanted to discuss about the recent 2011 Leaders Summit, from BRIC to BRICS, speaking in regard to the emerging economies Brazil, Russia, India, and China. The third annual meeting of the BRIC leaders was held on 14th of April 2011 in China's southern island province of Henan. This was the first meeting at which South Africa joined the other BRIC leaders in their annual deliberations. So we see President Jacob Zuma and newly elected President Dilma Rousseff of Brazil both attended the first meeting of the new BRICS group of leaders. It was an opportune time to reflect on the influence of the BRICS on the global economy, and in particular the emerging role of China as the largest, the strongest, and the most influential of the 5 BRIC economies. I found it particularly interesting to find South Africa at the BRIC table, as this appears to have been driven more by geopolitical than by economic reasons. According to Jim O'Neill of Goldman Sachs, the original inventor of the BRIC acronym in 2001, he says, quote unquote, "As far as economics are concerned, South Africa is one of the more wealthy nations in Africa and is currently the largest in US dollar terms at around $350 billion. However, this is quite small, not only by BRIC standards, but compared to some others as well. For example, Russia is around $1,600 billion, nearly 5 times larger than South Africa, and India is currently similar to the size of Russia. Brazil is currently closer to $2 billion in size, while China is considerably larger at around $5,500 billion. Importantly, there are a number of other economies from the so-called emerging world that are bigger than South Africa. This would include Indonesia, Mexico, Turkey, South Korea. These 4 nations, along with each of the BRIC economies, are all 1% or more of global GDP, and what we would increasingly think of as quote-unquote growth economies. It is tough to see how South Africa matches up to these 4 countries, never mind the BRIC countries. It made this next meeting of the BRICS leaders even more intriguing for those of us who follow the changing dynamics of the New World Order, a world in which the U.S. finds itself as more of a quote-unquote observer than the dominant player it once was, and a world in which some of the poorest African, Latin American, and Eastern European nations are likely to have increasing influence and power at the expense of our Western countries. This will inevitably challenge many of the practices, traditions, and institutions that have been taken for granted during the last century, and will result in new alliances and groupings of countries who, until quite recently, were heavily dependent on the developed world for foreign aid, investment, and financial support. The global financial crisis of 2008-2009 accelerated a process which began back in 2005 or so, when China's economic success and the increasingly dependency of the U.S. on China caused new trading and economic relationships to be formed between the BRIC countries. China started investing heavily into African resources. Russia and India traded energy and IT and military hardware, and Brazil exported iron ore, oil, coal, and other commodities to China. Suddenly, the BRIC countries were voting as a bloc at WTO negotiations in Doha and collaborating on climate change at Kyoto and later in Copenhagen, creating significant new problems for the original G7 group of nations, which had become the G8 with the inclusion of Russia in 1994. We see that in 2007, China, India, Brazil were invited as quote-unquote observers to the G8 meetings. And in the height of the financial crisis, when it was clear that any global response or collaboration was meaningless without the support of China and the other BRICS, the G20 was formed in September of 2009. As President Obama acknowledged at this time, he said, quote-unquote, "Today, leaders endorsed the G20 as the premier forum for their international economic cooperation. This decision brings to the table the countries needed to build a stronger, more balanced global economy, reform the financial system, and lift the lives of the poorest." China appears comfortable, indeed actively supportive, of a quote-unquote multipolar global system, despite their inevitable accession to the position of the world's largest economy, an event that is likely to take place within the next 15 years. China's challenges, issues, and problems are internal, not external. And while they keep one eye on global issues, their short and medium-term focus is on the internal process of urbanization, industrialization, and wealth creation for their 1.3 billion people. It would be wrong to think that the reform of the global economy is as high on China's priority list as might be gathered from reading in the Western media. Thank you for tuning in to GMA today. I hope you gained some unique global insights, and stay tuned for more insights. Thank you.